Greetings to everyone who listens to the Midnight Radio. Tonight, we will tell you about the horror stories that happened. You are at the correct address before falling asleep. We wish you a good listen.
The first story, I Am the One.
I've thought about telling this story for quite a while now. And first and foremost, I want to inform you from the very beginning that everything I am about to write is true. I will not be adding anything for the sake of the story, nor will I be using stupid stereotypical buzzwords to make this seem more terrifying. All I'll be doing is telling the truth. That's all I want to do. So, I'll start from the beginning and give a little background. When I was a kid, I began realizing I had a little insight on what was going to happen before it did. Now, by that I mean, I sometimes knew what some kid in the class would say next, whilst bothering the teacher. Or I knew when the phone was going to ring. That sort of thing. I didn't think much of it as a sweet 10 or 11-year-old. I just saw it as pretty cool, I guess. Then came on the feelings of, I've been here before whenever I went new places. I could never remember when, though. I began getting déjà vu regularly, which would last maybe 10 or 15 minutes. I'd usually sit back in awe and quietly mouth everything everyone was saying. As I got older, I began referring to it as a sensitivity I had. It wasn't until I was about 14 I realized I also had this sensitivity to spirits. I live in Ireland, so during the famous Celtic Tiger, my parents went all out on a beautiful 250-year-old house. I mean, knocking down sections, rebuilding, re-roofing, repainting, everything. We got to pick our own rooms. I chose the attic. It was terrifying at first, but once we rebuilt it a bit, painted it, refloored it, and all that good stuff, it looked pretty fantastic. The only part of the room that still bothered me was the small hatch in the ceiling up into a small boiler room. Just looking at gave me a bad feeling from the beginning. So I had placed my wardrobe under it and put stuffed animals on top to cover it up so I wouldn't have to see it. The first night in that room was quite intense. All through the night, I heard scratches and banging coming from the boiler room. I put it down to being new house noises until I heard footsteps run across the ceiling, over and over again. This happened every night. I remember mentioning it to my father. He laughed and said, "Unless there's a 4FT tall person living up there, you're not hearing anything," followed by the famous, "You're probably just dreaming." I knew I wasn't. This did freak me out a lot, but surprisingly, I just got used to it and ignored it. I began noticing strange things happening in my room. Little things. My wardrobe doors would be open. I'd close them and go downstairs, come back up, and they'd be open again. Probably just a slant in the floor, my father concluded. Ornaments around my room would be in different positions, that sort of thing. Then came the feeling of being watched very carefully. For every second I spent in that room, I could feel someone or something's eyes burning into me. It was uncomfortable to say the least, but I tried to get on with things. It wasn't long until I began getting night terrors. I saw horrible things I would not like to ever see again. However, the fact they were dreams made it less traumatizing, albeit slightly disturbing. My mother told me she would hear wails in the middle of the night. She'd get out of bed to find me standing outside my door, screeching and crying. She'd ask me what's wrong, but I'd simply shake my head and lower my chin to my chest. don't remember any of the crying. When I was told I was doing this, I was pretty freaked out. Something like that had never ever happened to me before. I began feeling a bit down being in that house, specifically my bedroom. Each night, I'd find myself thinking about how sad I was, which again, was odd for me because I'd never had any problems. I was always a happy kid. However, it was to get worse. I'll never forget the night it all went downhill. It was just a regular night, I guess, and I had gone to bed and fallen asleep. I woke suddenly in the middle of the night. Within a second of waking up, I was overcome with terror and dread. I felt something watching me again, only this time, I saw it. I slowly turned my head to the left of me, and there I saw it, a dark black figure staring at me. Its head was cocked forward from its body, looking down at me. I thought I was dreaming, so I sat up, blinked, and rubbed my eyes. No such luck. It was still there, only it looked as shocked as I was. It jolted back, perhaps when it realized I could see it, and slithered down the side of my bed, across the bottom of my bed, as disappeared into the darkness. I couldn't do anything, only sit there in terror and weep quietly. I had never been so scared. I stayed on the couch for a few days after that, and avoided my bedroom completely. I changed after that night. I couldn't eat, and I couldn't sleep. I couldn't do anything. I was just a terrified mess. It wasn't long before I decided enough was enough and braved the room once again. Due to sheer exhaustion, I managed to fall asleep on my bed for what felt like 5 minutes before waking abruptly. It was there again, only this time its face was directly opposite mine. This time, though, it was in broad daylight, as I had only managed sleep at about 6 a.m. I think it's fair to say I shat my pants. Some time passed, and I'm not sure how thinking back on it, but I did manage to brush all this off, and I did continue to stay in that room. It was quiet for a while, but before long, I began waking with cuts on my body, slices in my skin, mostly on my back and shoulder blades. Each night, as I tried to sleep, I felt some invisible force clasp my neck. It got harder to breathe each night. I became very depressed, finding myself sitting awake at all hours, knowing I was being watched and contemplating just ending my life. That bedroom became a pit of despair. My father was, and still is to this day, very skeptical of me and my stories. My mother, not so much. She got frightened by what had been happening and insisted we call the parish priest, typically Irish, I know. Although I'm not religious in any way, I reached the stage of fuck it. I'll try anything, so I went ahead with it. The priest called over. He read whatever it is they read in situations like these, splashed holy water everywhere, and stuck a cross he got from the Vatican in Rome up in the room. That wasn't enough for me, since I wasn't religious. I felt it was hypocritical of me to believe that would work. So I just moved rooms. I'm still terrified of that attic, and have only been in there for brief moments when I've had to be since. I just assumed the attic was haunted and left it at that. The new room was fine. I was more or less fine for about a year, still slightly traumatized, might I add. And I thought that was it, until I moved into a new house for college, and it all started again. I moved towns for college and found a perfect house with some of my very good friends. I had hoped to put everything that happened in my hometown to rest. I was very optimistic about my fresh start. I moved to a really historic city, and the house I live in now is about 150 years old. The first night myself and my housemate stayed there, We were unsettled by scratching noises coming from the walls. We put it down to new house noises. I should have known better, right? And brushed it off. We ignored the nightly banging and scratching. One day I decided to bring it up due to something that I thought was a bit strange. I explained that I was in bed one night, trying to sleep when I felt my body jerking slightly, as if something was pulling on my quilt. I expected them to laugh, but one of my housemates sat up and explained the strange experience he had only nights before. He said he was in his room, trying to go asleep, and he had had his feet hanging over the end of the bed. He said he was just asleep when something grabbed onto his foot. He said he pulled his legs up to his chest and lay there for a while, pretty shaken. We all went a bit quiet then and just gazed around the house, getting more and more creeped out. It wasn't long before shit hit the fan in the house. At 6 a.m. every morning, I heard a light wailing coming from one corner in my bedroom, and every morning, I put my head to the wall to listen. Every time I called my housemates to hear it, it stopped. Typically. I think they started to think I was going crazy. It took a long time before they heard it as well. I was pretty relieved when they said the words, "Yeah, I hear it too," because I was beginning to question my sanity. There was then daily banging from the kitchen, switches flicking on and off, and the likes. We kind of just laughed it off all the time. I knew something was up, though, when I saw a black figure again. I had been sitting on the couch and could see into the kitchen from the corner of my eye. I happened to catch a glimpse of it, staring in at me. I looked over quickly. It was gone. I ignored it and decided not to say anything. I didn't get too freaked out, since I was kind of used to it at that point, I guess. But I lost it slightly when one of my housemates let something slip. We were all at a party, and one of my housemates turned to me and said something along the lines of, "Can you believe what our other housemate saw the other night?" I had no idea what he was talking about, so I confronted the other guy. He sighed and explained how he didn't want me to be scared and wasn't going to say anything, but went on to tell me how he saw a black figure in the bathroom. I wondered if it was the same black figure I saw. We were all very wary in the house from then on. Then came the night it all went downhill again. It was only me and my housemate who had seen the black figure. The other had returned home for the weekend. We were both in the living room working on college stuff when we heard a bang. We both stopped and looked at each other with that aw shit look. We knew it was starting again. Only this time, it was much more intense. There was banging coming from all sides of the house. It was like someone was quickly moving around the entire house, banging the walls and stomping on the floor. This went on for a few minutes as we sat there in terror. Then it stopped, and the banging continued from just one area of the house, my room. We were kind of in that stage of nervously laughing and looking around. I had been sitting on the couch, and my housemate was sitting opposite me on a beanbag. He was saying something to me when his face dropped. He went completely white and just stared beyond my shoulder. I asked him what was wrong. All he said was we needed to get out of that room now, and that I wasn't to sleep in my room tonight, since the banging was still coming from there. I calmly asked him, what did he see? He ignored me, just gathered our stuff, and began going into the other room. I stopped him and calmly asked again, what did you see? He was looking past me again and explained how he saw a black figure sliding across the wall directly behind me. We both left that room and locked ourselves into his. We just sat there for a while in silence. I began thinking about all the freaky shit that has gone on in my short lifespan. I began thinking about the significance of these black figures and began wondering if there was multiple black figures or if it was all the same one. The same black figure I woke up to that night years ago. That was when it dawned on me for the first time. Maybe I am the one who is haunted.
The second story, Genevieve's Smile.
I've always been a skeptical, logical person, a critical thinker. At a young age, my father, a doctor, told me that everything outside the physical realm is a myth after I had a nightmare about demons. Hocus pocus, he said, an illusion created by errors of the human mind. By the age of 5, I didn't believe in Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, or the Tooth Fairy. Nevertheless, I loved horror movies and supernatural subjects because I thought they were fascinating, even from a scientific standpoint. And I think on some subconscious level, I wanted to discover something so unbelievable as a ghost. That's probably one of the reasons I decided to visit the North Trestle. The North Trestle is an old, outdated railroad bridge that towers high over a narrow part of North Lake, a winding river valley flooded by a dam over 60 years ago. The bridge is even older than the lake. And as with all old things, people perpetuate rumors about the bridge being haunted by a ghost of some kind. The story goes that Genevieve, a wealthy girl who went to our high school in the 60s, used to secretly meet her female lover at the bridge on moonlit nights. When her controlling mother found out and wouldn't let her see the girl anymore, she hung herself from the bridge. Apparently, if you walk across the bridge on a full moon, you'll see her. Genevieve was a classic story every freshman at our high school heard, and I thought it was just stupid. One day, I decided it'd be fun to go to that bridge and film it for our school newscast, hopefully to put the dumb story to rest. Chris, our editor, was all for going with me, and our friend Jenna wanted to go just to see something happen firsthand. 1 week later, on a full moon, we grabbed a camera and a 2-liter of Mountain Dew and headed for the bridge. We took the North Road farther and farther out of town until only pine trees and cornfields surrounded us. This was the part of Catawba County most people didn't think about, a dark corner of the map. Thank God for the full moon, I thought to myself. We hadn't seen a streetlight for miles, and I have pretty bad night blindness. Even basic shapes I can't make out if the sun is down or the lights are dim. After what seemed like forever, we finally saw moonlight shimmering on water and parked in a marina near the bridge. "Ah, it's cold," Jenna shouted as soon as we opened the car door. "Good," I said. "We need a cold, clear night like this. I don't even think we need a light for the camera." But for some reason, the moonlight piercing the cold air was more eerie than total darkness, the way the light trickled through the pine trees to the bare ground. In some odd way, it felt like the night wanted to show us something. As we walked along the rusted railroad toward the bridge, Chris spoke up. "So, we walked to the middle of the bridge. Dan, you film some there, then walk to the other side of the bridge, then come back. We get at least 10 minutes of film, and I'll edit out the boring parts. Good plan." Good plan. But the whole thing's gonna be boring parts, I said. "You don't know that, Dan," Jenna replied. Walking on the trestle bridge was nerve-wracking in itself. The gaps were easily large enough to step through, and as soon water was below us, we were at a dizzying height. "Could you jump off this thing? Maybe we should come back here in the summer," Chris noted. "It's gotta be pretty deep," I added. "Well, you two can have fun with that," Jenna replied. She was usually the voice of reason. Just before we got to the middle of the bridge, I was paralyzed. A cloud had covered the moon, and I might as well have been in a cave. "Hold up, guys. I can't see where to walk." They were both shocked. "You can't even see the bridge?" "I can't see my own hand," I clarified. "Just chill out and give me a second." I felt around for the wood ties and made slow progress. "Why did we trust you with the camera?" They laughed. "Don't trip and drop that thing." To my relief, the cloud passed and the moon came out again. Finally, we made it to the bridge's midpoint and sat down to film some uninteresting material. Here we are at the North Trestle, said to be the one and only place to see Genevieve's ghost. High school students in our area have heard this story for over a decade. Chris narrated enthusiastically for several minutes until the low battery light came on. "Oh crap," he said. "Dan, you walk down to the other side of the bridge and come back. That should be enough time for Jenna to go get the spare battery. "Yeah, right. I'm not going by myself," Jenna spoke up. Fine. I'll go with you," he compromised. They set off back toward the car, and I went in the other direction to reach the other side. Only 5 minutes later, I heard a loud, high-pitched scream. "Jenna!" I said out loud. I reasoned she must have tripped or fallen, but when I looked back down the long track, I saw they had both already made it off the bridge. The scream also sounded like it came from the other direction, the direction I was headed. I kept walking, though somewhat more reluctantly. For the first time, a cold breeze blew. Some dull, low noise was now humming. I wasn't sure what it was, or if it was just my heightened hearing, detecting some distant disturbance. A few minutes later, I was at the last quarter of the bridge, feeling more confident that the North Trestle was just a bridge, and the only trace of Genevieve was 6 feet underground somewhere, dust by now. That confidence was shattered, however, when I looked toward the sky. A cloud was on its way toward the full moon again, and beyond that were a few more clouds. "Damn," I said aloud. Seconds later, I was cloaked in darkness. "All right, nothing to panic about," I tried telling myself. But the sound of that bizarre scream was still in my mind, and the low, humming noise was getting louder. I shuffled and felt for the right steps, slowly making progress toward the other side of the bridge. "Daniel," something ahead of me whispered faintly. I froze. It had to be the wind. At that point, I just wished I could see something, even just a shadow. But there was no hint my eyes could give me. I walked forward. I thought I heard breathing, as I slowly found the right places to step. Suddenly, something rushed past me. I turned around and shouted, "Hey, who is this?" Now I knew my mind wasn't playing tricks on me. Someone was here. It had to be someone there to play a prank on us, I thought, or some homeless wanderer who wanted to be left alone. I stopped and placed the camera on the track. Having a camera is one more reason for someone to kill me, I reasoned. I'd go back and get it later. For a few minutes, I waited until my phone rang. It was Jenna. "Dan, we have the battery. Is that you coming towards us? Did you film the other side yet?" I shouted at first chance. "No, it's not me. Go back to the car. I think someone's here." She hung up. "Okay," I thought to myself. "How do I get back to the car? This person trapped me. I thought about going to the other side, but I'd never be able to find my way in those woods. Even if I could, I'd be on the other side of the lake, and there wasn't another bridge for miles. Damn, I said aloud again. I would have to confront this person, say I'll leave and never come back, and get off this terrible bridge. I shuffled some more in the dark, heading back the way I came. A minute later, the moon came out again, and I saw it. A figure was coming my way. The bridge was only lit for a few seconds, until the moon again disappeared behind a cloud. I shuffled forward, my shaking leg almost falling through a gap. The moon came out again, and it was much closer, only about 200 yards away, but still, it looked like just a shadow. The moon disappeared again, and I shuffled forward, now shaking so much I thought I might fall. When the moon came back out, I stopped cold. The figure was closer now, only about 100 yards away, and I could make out its unusual features. It was limping forward, its arms swinging as if they were sewn on. Greasy black hair hung down to its knees, and its head was tilted to the side. But the face, that's what made my blood turn cold, made my stomach feel sick. It was off-white with a green hue and blank. No eyes, nose, or mouth, just a wrinkled texture like a pumpkin that had rotted. I prayed that the next cloud wouldn't cover up my only light again, but my prayer went unanswered. Darkness fell again. It's someone in a mask. It's someone in a mask. It's someone in a mask, I tried telling myself, but something in me said otherwise. The way it moved was just unnatural. I tried backing up slowly, almost tripping. How cold is this water, I thought. How high am I? Wait, what am I thinking? Why is that an option? What are my other options? I looked up and saw the moon, just about to reveal itself. My legs were shaking like jello, barely holding me up. I had the feeling someone gets just before they bungee jump. Though I didn't have a bungee cord, moonlight crept out from behind the cloud one more time, and I caught one glance. One terrible glance. It stood 10 feet in front of me, head tilted to the side. I was wrong about one thing. It did have a mouth. A hideous smile spread wide across its blank face. Its wrinkled skin spread to reveal black gums and jagged teeth. "Daniel," the smiling mouth said. It took one step forward. Instinct took over, like when your hand pulls back after touching a hot pan. My legs threw me sideways, my mind not even calculating how far I needed to jump to avoid the concrete foundation below. My stomach dropped, but I didn't even look at the water I was headed towards. I didn't straighten out or prepare for the impact. For all that time, as the cold air rushed past my body, the image of that grotesque smile was imprinted in my mind. Only at the last second did I twist and avoid my back hitting the water first, as I narrowly missed the concrete. Even submerged in icy water, all that was on my mind was her smile. Even shivering in my boxers on the car ride home, all I could see was Genevieve's smile